If you guys have been thinking about getting your ham radio license, then you should go over to hamradioprep.com. I've been checking this out myself and going through their courses. I'm going to be getting my license here pretty soon, and it is a great training resource to get you ready for the test. You can use the discount code RealitySurvival20 to save 20% off at checkout. So check it out, hamradioprep.com, and use the discount code RealitySurvival20. Thanks, guys. Hey everybody, I'm JJ, you're watching Reality Survival, and so today we're going to talk about water. I'm going to talk about a few different aspects of water that sometimes don't get spoken about very often, and you know, that is that we've all heard that we need to have water stored, need to have water in our home, you know, in case there's an emergency, in case there's a disaster, whatever the case may be, because water is vitally important to being able to sustain life. Problem is that no matter how much water you're able to store at your house, eventually that water is probably going to run out. You know, if you're storing it in gallon jugs or 55-gallon jugs or whatever the case may be, there's a limit to the amount of how long that'll last. And so we really need to be able to go out and gather additional water and transport it and move it and, you know, get it back to your house and filter it and make it safe to drink and all that kind of stuff. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get going, just want to say thank you to all the folks that are participating in the Prepper Roundtable for September's Preparedness Month. And I believe the next video in the series is Magic Prepper, so go check out his channel and see the video that he puts out. I'll put a link to everybody down in the description below, so you guys should go and check out their channels and subscribe to them if you're not already. But with that, the first thing you need to do is for identifying water sources, you need to figure out where you live, and then you need to look around and figure out where are some other water sources that are close by to me. So this is a river that runs, you know, just a few hundred yards from my house. So this is a pretty good source of water. It runs year round. We've also got a pond on the property as well, and you know, we'll take you up there and show you that too. But you know, getting water from a river into your house is not necessarily an easy thing. So let's go ahead and take a look at some options for doing that. Okay, so before we go into transportation sources, I wanted to show you talk a little bit about a couple of different ways to identify what sources of water are around your house. You know, because I said that you need to figure that out. And probably the best way to do that nowadays is to go on Google Earth, find your house, and then use that search function to see what sort of open groundwater sources are available in your area, you know, and how far they are from your home and all that kind of stuff. Then go out and actually walk to those sources, see how you can get there, see what's around there, what obstacles you have to go through, and all that kind of stuff, because you need to have an idea of, you know, how accessible is it going to be to you. And kind of part of the problem with this is in an SHTF type situation, water sources are going to become very valuable. And there are going to be people who are probably going to try to control access to those sources. And so you may have to, you know, you may have to fight for the ability to get water. Believe it or not, as crazy as it sounds, it could be a situation where, you know, you have to get your tactical gear and all that kind of stuff, and you know, a team of folks with you, and go down and get your water and come back, and that would be distressing, and it wouldn't be any fun. But it's the reality in some situations, in some circumstances, and in some places, especially in desert environments and that kind of thing. Just got some stinging nettles on my leg here. You know, that's water is going to be very, very valuable. And even in urban areas where water is a little bit more difficult to find, it also may be something that people try to control. So you need to kind of plan for that and think ahead for that. What we've got back here, I'm not sure how well you guys can see it, but this is we're in, you know, middle of August right now. It's the hottest part of the year, and we still have this spring that is running down the hillside here. Springs are a great source of water, depending on you know, what the source of the spring is and all that kind of stuff, many times, you know, they will be safer to drink than, say, a pond or a river or something along those lines. And that's because it's been filtered through the earth and it comes up and it just doesn't have as many contaminants. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% safe. You really have to know the source of that. So something that you can do, I'll walk you guys over here real quick and just show you one little modification that we did to one of the other springs that we have on our property. We've got two, and that is, so basically we just took a fire circle and we just put the fire circle, kind of dug a hole, put it down in the ground, and we kind of put it where the seam, where the water would seep in at the seam, and it does a pretty good job of holding water, you know. And it's probably only, you know, 15-20 gallons or something along those lines, but it's a whole lot more than what it was, which was like this. You know, it was just kind of trickling down through here. Now this would be a lot more difficult to gather, but with something like this, we could just dip out of it with a 5-gallon bucket or whatever the case may be, and, you know, be able to have access to it and take it back to the house. The other thing that you can do in, you know, situations where you have a water source that is pretty sparse is you can take and dig a hole right here. That's called a seepage well, and then you can let the water run into it and then scoop it out of the hole. So that's another potential option. So anyway, this is just a different, you know, this looks at some different types of water sources. You might be surprised at what's around your house. You just have to get out and walk around, do some area familiarization, do some searching with, you know, satellite, like Google Earth or satellite photos, aerial photos, those kinds of things. But you want to have those labeled and have a page for those in your emergency binder. You know, have it, because you might do it and 10 years goes by and then you don't remember where they're at, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Maybe things have changed since you've been out there, whatever. It's just a good idea to have it written down so that you can, you know, like maybe 3, 4, 5 different sources of water in your emergency binder, you know, with a map and showing the distance and how to get there and what you need to transport it and all that kind of stuff written down. That way, when the time comes, you don't really got to think about anything. You can just look at that emergency binder and be like, bam, all right, let's go to water source alpha. And this is a list of equipment we're going to need. This is how we get there, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, that's kind of some thoughts on identifying water sources in your area. Hey guys, if you were concerned about an EMP damaging your electronics, then I'm going to recommend you take a look at the EMP Shield. Right now you can save $50 per unit by using the discount code RealitySurvival at checkout. EMP Shield is tested by Keystone Labs and proven to be able to protect your electronics in your home, in your vehicle, and in your equipment like generators and solar panels and all those kinds of things. So go over to empshield.com, take a look at them, and use the discount code RealitySurvival to save $50 per unit. Thanks. Okay guys, so let's take a look at some different options for storing your water. You've gone out, you've identified where your water sources are around your area, you documented it in your emergency folder. Now your water source ran out that you had stored in your house. Now you have to go get some more. Okay, so these are just various different options, right? You could use really anything that would hold water and that would move water, but these are some things to think about. Over here on the left, this is a 25-gallon tank. It's brand new. It's good. It looks a little dirty on the outside, but it's clean on the inside. And that is sized just about right to where I can put that on the back of my four-wheeler, my ATV, or I could put it on the bucket of the tractor if it need be, or whatever the case may be. And that'll carry 25 gallons at once. Now, water's pretty heavy. I think it's about 8 pounds per gallon. So, you know, that adds up pretty quick. So you got to kind of take that into consideration. If you're going to just be walking, how much can you carry over a long distance, you know? If you're using an ATV or, you know, a riding lawnmower or something along those lines, whatever the case may be, then you can probably carry a little bit more. If you got a tractor, you can carry more, so on and so forth. So it's all kind of, you know, a matter of scale and what you're going to use. From a personal carry standpoint, probably one of the best things out there is just the good old-fashioned jerry cans. The reason that they're pretty good is they've got a pretty wide mouth. They're very heavy duty. They're going to last a long time. They've got a nice handle on them. You can put like a stick, you know, through there and carry them over your shoulders if you want to. There's a lot of options. So these aren't too bad at all. Another option, it's a lot more, probably a little cheaper. I think those run about 35 or so if you get them used. This one, it run you about $20. They call this a U-jug. And, you know, a lot of people, even though they're not made for gasoline, a lot of people use them for gasoline. They could also be used for water though. And they've got a fairly wide mouth for filling it. It's not, you know, as big as a jerry can, but it's not bad. And the handles are fairly comfortable to carry. If you've got one on each side, it's going to hold about 5 gallons each, and obviously it can pour out okay. So that's not too bad of an option either. Many people, the go-to thing is going to be just a 5-gallon bucket. And you know, a 5-gallon bucket may be a thing that you want to take with you, regardless of whatever you have, just for the purposes of filling it, you know, for getting the water out of the creek or the stream or the river or whatever the case may be and putting it into your containers. It's going to be a pretty good option right there. If you're, you know, older or you have some kind of physical disability, or, you know, a smaller female or something, you could get smaller buckets too. You know, they got 3-gallon buckets and all that kind of stuff. It might not be a bad idea to have a lid with you. A Gamma Seal lid's probably even a little better, but that way when you're transporting it, it's not splashing around all over you and everything. Although these style, once you got them on, they're a little bit harder to get off, so that Gamma Seal is probably the way to go. Okay, these are a couple of options from, you know, you can get from Walmart and that kind of thing. They're going to work pretty well. They're not as heavy duty. The benefit to the Aquatainer is that you've got the spout right here, and it makes it, you know, getting it out, dispensing it a little easier. Now, if you're going to use it for potable water, remember you've got to run it through a filter first and all that. But if you were just using this for bathing or washing or something along those lines, then you could take it right from the source to here. But make sure you have your containers labeled if you're going to do that. Another option that a lot of people have, especially once you get the water purified, once you get it treated or whatever, is just like these Igloo kind of containers here. They got the little spout on it, you know, and you can pour it out that way, and that's going to work pretty good too. Now, for storing larger amounts, I like these 15-gallon blue barrels. They are still very heavy when full, but they have they're still manageable. You can still move them, you know, with like the 55-gallon drums. Man, you fill one of those things up and you're not going to be moving it very easily. So 15 gallons, a little bit more manageable, and they also can fit in smaller places. So, and then if you combine that with a little pump on here like this, I got this one from Northern Tool. It's an Ironton pump. Then it makes it pretty usable, you know, for around the house and those kind of things. So that's some options, some things to think about with regard to storage. Now, like I just showed you here, this is one kind of pump. This is another kind of pump. It's just very like a plastic, you know, kind of suction cup. Whoop. and you just pump it like that and it'll get it. And it's made to get water out of like 55-gallon barrels and stuff like that. You can actually change the length of it depending on how deep your container is. Something else to think about, if you have a well, then you may want to get a well bucket. That's what this is. The well bucket basically has a little flap valve down here that when it goes down into the water, it pushes the flap up, and this little container fills, and it'll hold about 2 gallons. And then once you get it full, then you start to pull it up and it closes that flap, that seal. You can make these with PVC and stuff like that too. And then you can pull out a couple gallons at a time. So that's an option as well. If you have a well and you're counting on a well, then you need to make sure that you have a generator or a source of electricity that will run that well so that you can get water out of it. Also understand, on some wells, the casing may not be large enough to get that specific, that diameter down it. So you may have to remove some components, or there is also, I forget the name of it now, I've done a video on it in the past, I'll link it down below, of a very slim line water bucket that's very similar to that, but it's smaller and thinner, and you can actually get it down between the components in the well casing to be able to get your water out right now, or in a SHTF situation. So yeah, I think that's some pretty good options as far as different storage and transportation containers that you can use to get your water from one place to another. The old saying is that you only need 1 gallon of water per day per person to survive. But that is really only taking into consideration your survival. It doesn't take into consideration sanitation, hygiene, cooking, just the other things that you use water for in a regular basis. As opposed to 1 gallon a day per person, you probably should really be taking into consideration, in a long-term grid down type scenario, you're probably going to need more like 5 to 8 gallons of water per day over the average. When you're having to wash your clothes, you're having to do baths, you're having to do showers, cook your food, all that kind of stuff. So you need to have the ability to move and transport that water, more so than you might think. You really got to spend some time thinking about this, because this is going to be a project. It's going to be something that somebody is having to do almost all the time. It'll be a daily or a reoccurring thing that you have to get out of your house, you have to go out into the world, and you're going to have to get water. Okay? And maybe you're lucky enough that you've got a generator, you can run a long-term generator and all that kind of stuff. My next video in this series is going to be about a whole house generator. And those are great options, but they do still have limits, because you still have fuel. So at some point, you may not be able to use your well, or you may have to go off property, or whatever the case may be, or out into the city or the suburbs or wherever you live, and get that source of water. So it's something that takes some planning, and it takes some forethought to be able to do on a reoccurring basis, especially if you're in a situation where you don't have a whole ton of fuel. Maybe you've got some fuel because you prepped or whatever, and you can run a small vehicle like an ATV or a tractor or something along those lines, but you're probably not going to be driving your cars very much, because that's going to run that fuel out really quick. You may need to save it. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of ideas for purifying and filtering the water. All right, almost forgot the Aquapod or the Water Bob. This is another storage option, not really transportation option, but it's a storage option for those people maybe that live in apartments or living in really urban areas, or you really could use it anywhere. But if you have some notice before things get bad, you can take this. What it is it's basically a large plastic or rubberized container that's going to hold about 65 gallons or so of water, and then it'll have a little pump or whatever on top of it, and you can get the water out of it and use it. Now this is a good idea, especially if it's in a situation where you know that the water might be turned off or contaminated or whatever ahead of time, and then you've got some advance notice and you can fill this thing up. You could probably also figure out a way to fill this thing up, you know, even after, if you weren't able to do it from the faucet, if you had some sort of a 12-volt DC transfer pump. I talked about that in videos in the past. It's basically just a small little, you know, like half horse or so electric motor with a pump on it. Hook it to a battery, and it'll run the flow from your storage container into whatever new container you have. Those are a great thing to have as well. So just some extra things to think about. Okay guys, so when it comes to purification and filtering, the primary method that I like to use is a combination of using, what's the right word for this? Calcium hypochlorite. So pool shock, and just one of these bags lasts a very, very long time. And you know, you get several pounds of it. These are 1 pound bags, and it would last you, I mean, a lifetime almost. Eventually it would run out, but we're talking a long ways down the road. I did a video on this and showing how to purify water using pool shock, and talking in depth about, you know, the ratios and the mixtures and all that kind of stuff. So check out that video. So that's going to be step one, or the first part of this. The reason you want to do that is because filters do not remove viruses. Don't matter what anybody tells you. There are very few filters, strictly filters, okay? We're just talking about filter size. And the reason is because viruses are too small. They get down to about 0.0004 microns. Most filters are only around 1 or 2 microns, somewhere in that range. Now they're going to be able to remove all the bacteria, the Cryptosporidium, the Giardia, you know, all that kind of stuff. But in a long-term grid down situation, we have to start worrying about other things too. Other pathogens start popping up in the water supply and all that kind of stuff, because people start using the water supplies to urinate and defecate in, and you can start to get, you know, a lot of different waterborne diseases, cholera and other kinds of things, E. coli, hepatitis, you know, and just lots of different things that may be too small for a filter. Okay, and again, I'm not trying to give you every example of what could be too small for a filter. I just think it's a good idea to go ahead and hit it with some chlorine and then filter it. All right, so with regard to the filter, personally I think that the Alexa Pure filter system is a pretty good filter system. You can find them online at Amazon and all that kind of stuff. Whoops, that's loud. I was going to try to show you the filter if I can in here. The reason I like the Alexa Pures is because their filters are a lot larger. They have a lot more surface area. They're also more sturdy, and so with, you know, the Berkeys are also good. Okay, they're not. I'm not trash talking the Berkeys or anything like that. I just think the design of the Alexa Pure Pro filter is a little better. And if I remember correctly, when I was doing the research, they also filter out just slightly more items and pathogens and stuff than the Berkey did, but the Berkey is also excellent. Okay, so I'm not trying to give it a hard time. So between the combination of those two things, as far as your potable water that you're going to use to consume in your body, you know, this is going to get you pretty squared away. I don't think you need to go too much more than this. Now, if you're looking for portable sources, like for a bug out type situation or whatever, I personally prefer the Katadyn Pocket water filter. It's a ceramic filter with a very long life, and it's also field serviceable and everything like that. It is pretty expensive. It's about as expensive as one of these are, but it does work very, very well. So another option that you can do is you can create your own. So what I've done here, I did a video on this a long time ago, and this is a Dolan candle filter. Also has very good filtering capabilities. This is the top portion of the one that I made. You just, I've cut a larger hole into it, and then I take a sheet, kind of put it around the top of the bucket lid like that, and that way you can pre-filter as you're pouring your water in so that your filters will last a little bit longer. And then you set that bucket on top of this one, which has got a lid and a cutout hole for the one spout, and then you've got a spigot right here. So it's just essentially a homemade version of the Alexa Pure Pro, you know, just a backup. And you can have, you know, these candle filters are relatively inexpensive. I want to say off the top of my head they were like 30 or 40 bucks back when I bought them. I don't remember, but I've got several of these, you know, and so we can use those for an extended period, you know, time after time, and you can have both of these filters going so that you have more water, you know. So something to think about also is you want to make sure that you do your sanitation with like as far as your personal sanitation with water that is clean. At least with we're talking about brushing your teeth and washing your face, you want it to be potable water. And the reason is you can get some of that stuff, you know, if it was not potable, if it hadn't been filtered, you can get that stuff in your mouth and in your eyes and all that kind of stuff, and it can cause you to get sick. So it's best to use water that has been cleaned for all that kind of stuff. Now with your body and all that kind of stuff, you really don't have to use potable water. You can absolutely, you know, use lake water, pond water, whatever the case may be. And it's not going to be that big a deal, aside from it maybe not smelling as fresh and all that kind of stuff, but it's, you know, it's still usable. So that takes care of filtering and purifying. This is a little kit that I put together for the pool shock. You want to, one of the things with them is that you want to make sure that you store that stuff in a plastic container, not in a metal container, because it's very corrosive. And make sure it's got a good tight seal on it, because you can get chlorine gases that will leak from it and stuff like that if you don't. If you're going to get this stuff, make sure that you want to get calcium hypochlorite at least 68%. Okay, this is the brand that I've got, and again, it's just regular pool shock. The In the Swim brand is what I got, but it doesn't really matter which one. Be careful in the storage of this. Be careful in the handling of it, because it is pretty caustic. But because it's in granular form, it will last much longer than liquid bleach. Liquid bleach only lasts about 6 months to a year. So that's fine to have liquid bleach and to use it, but just realize it has a lifespan and it's not going to last forever. And if you have 10 gallons of bleach, you got to use all of them, you know, relatively quickly. So that's why I think the powdered form or granular bleach is probably a little bit better. Okay guys, so that's going to about round us up for the day. One thing before I go, I just want to know, this isn't a comprehensive thing on water. It's just really trying to cover some of the things that I don't see talked about all that often on prepper channels and all that kind of stuff. We could talk about rainwater collection, using your guttering system and all those kinds of things. Those are excellent tools to have. And really, you know, if you live in an area where there's rainstorms, one of the easiest things you can do for water collection in an SHTF situation is take some 2x8s or something along those lines, 2x6s, 2x8, 2x10, 2x12, whatever you got, you know, in an 8-foot by 8-foot square, and put a tarp out on that, staple that tarp down around the edges and everything like that, and allow it to just sit outside in an open area when a rainstorm's coming, and you can collect a whole bunch of water very quickly. And as a general rule, that water is going to be safe to drink, okay, unless you're having some acid rain or something like that. That's going to be safe to drink. You don't even have to purify it or anything like that. You can pull right from it, put it in your containers, and you can drink it and you're good to go. So that is an excellent way as well to collect water, you know, in a situation where you need water. So don't overlook the simplicity of just putting a tarp out you know, in a wooden rectangle, kind of stapled down to the edges and all that kind of stuff to hold it up, and how much water that'll get you, how quickly. I mean, that's a very easy solution for gathering water. So again, thank you to all the channels who are participating in this Preparedness Month Roundup. Prepper Potpourri is the one that put it together, but there's multiple channels who are participating. I'll put all those channels down in the description below with links to their channel. I highly encourage you guys to go and subscribe to their channels and you know, check out what they have to say. I think the next person in the roundup, like I said, is Magic Prepper. We'll put a link down to his channel too, so head on over there, check out his channel. And if you're not subscribed, if this is the first time to my channel, I would definitely appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button. And we're also over on Rumble. We're trying to make a transition over to Rumble as soon as possible, just so that we can get away from the YouTube nonsense. So, you know, we appreciate your support there as well. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate it when you click thumbs up, and don't forget to live the 6 P's. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.